As we all know, police brutality in the streets and the use of force in institutions has become a widespread problem, especially in the United States. Focusing on incarceration specifically, use of force from officers varies greatly depending on the state, the types of inmate being dealt with, and even the type of institution. In fact, according to Griffin's article entitled An Officer's Readiness to Use Force in a County Jail, the author came to the conclusion that an officer's readiness to use force is directly correlated to the climate of the institution. One of the biggest pros about use of force is that there are several methods that don't involve physical contact. Tasers and mace are some of the prime examples of modern innovations that are used in institutions. Many people think that the use of force is an inmate versus an officer, but according to Prison Legal News, use of force is mainly used in riots, cell block fights, and when an individual inmate does not comply and becomes aggressive. Use of force within institutions gets the job done while keeping officers and other inmates safe from harm. But at what cost? According to a 2016 article titled Callous and Cruel, it was revealed that corrections officers tend to use more force on individuals with mental disabilities and dwindling mental health. Inmates with autism experience more force than inmates without, simply because they are not complying, when in reality they are overstimulated, confused, and probably don't know what is going on. In addition, the author concluded that officers who are stressed and burned out from work show higher levels of lashing out at inmates. Use of force in institutions does get the job done. However, there are some instances where use of force is violated. In the United States today, there are various training programs that correctional officers go through to ensure the safety of both themselves and other inmates. It includes dealing with individuals with mental disabilities, approaching situations depending on the circumstance, and using force as a last resort. So, where did our idea of use of force come from? What are the attitudes and guidelines used today in institutions? And why is it such a controversial topic amongst Americans today? Stay tuned. Our reporters have the newest details.
The history regarding use of force in corrections comes from the same place most of our principles come from, England. In Old England, use of force was common, though it usually involved using force as a punishment like whippings or floggings. The concept of using force in corrections stems from the need to control the offender. In its most severe form, it closely resembles corporal punishment, being that the use of force and corporal punishment utilize force as a component in compliance.
Lay down face first.
Me?
Yes.
Fuck that, man.
Lay down face first.
No.
Lay down face first, Ken.
Use of force was not as severely regulated back when U.S. corrections were first being developed in 1790 with the correction of the Walnut Street Jail. One of the first laws that were put in place to control the use of force in the United States was the 8th Amendment, and according to ACLU.org, under the 8th Amendment, prison officials have the legal duty to refrain from using excessive force on and against prisoners. Years after the 8th Amendment, other laws were put in place to further the restrictions on use of force. In California, historically, the use of force is a pressing matter. There have been a couple of laws or statutes enacted to manage the use of force, to the point where some state torts state that assaultive conduct by prison staff, even if it does not rise to the level of unconstitutional, cruel, or unusual punishment, is a violation, according to prisonlaw.com. Today, the use of force in corrections is still an important topic that is heavily debated.
More than 200 charges, ranging from excessive force to intimidation to misconduct in office.
The Federal Bureau of Prisons website offers some guidelines on the proper use of restraint and force in prisons in the program statement P5566.06. The Bureau of Prisons authorized staff to use force only as a last alternative after all other efforts to resolve a situation failed. Staff should first attempt to gain the inmate's voluntary cooperation before using force. Force may not be used to punish an inmate. If authorized, staff must use only that amount of force necessary to gain control of the inmate, to protect and ensure the safety of everyone, to prevent serious property damage, and to ensure security. Staff can apply physical restraints necessary to gain control of inmates who appear dangerous because they assault another individual, destroy property, attempt suicide, or become violent.
There's no audio, but the video says plenty. On the 15th, Damian Herrera, the man accused of gunning down his stepdad, mom, and brother, then two strangers in northern New Mexico, lashed out at jail guards.
This rule on the application of restraints does not restrict the use of precautionary restraints in situations such as handcuffs during the movement or transfer of inmates. Precautionary restraints may also be used as prescribed by medical staff. An inmate who is pregnant should not be placed in restraints unless there are reasonable grounds to believe that they are present an immediate and serious threat. An employee cannot use brutality, physical violence, intimidation, or use any force beyond that which is necessary to subdue an inmate. When there is time for the calculated use of force or application of restraints, staff must first determine if the situation can be resolved without resorting to force. If the use of force is necessary, then the use of force team technique shall be used. The use of force team technique involves trained staff clothed in protective gear who enter the inmate's area, each with a coordinated responsibility for helping achieve the immediate control of the inmate. All incidents involving the use of force and the application of restraints must be documented. There are more guidelines in the document.
Prompts a violent attack. This scene unfolds in the booking area of the Marion County Jail. Police say corrections officer Damon was trying to get Xavier Washington in the orange jumpsuit to a holding cell because he was being disruptive. Authorities report Washington was asked 3 times to get moving, but he refused.